now is take the plane all the way from South Africa to India. We're going to discuss a rather imperative conversation, leadership. I remember speaking about leadership just a few weeks ago with a bunch of peers of mine, and I said, so what is leadership? And the truth is we're all leaders in our own rights. You're not just a leader if you're a leader of an organization. You could be a leader in your family, amongst your siblings. Leadership is for all of us as individuals. So we don't lack leadership. What we lack is elevated leadership. And when I saw this topic, I started to ask myself, so what does that mean to me? For me, a quote that really encompasses it is one that says, if you want to lead the orchestra, you have to turn your back from the audience. And what does that mean? It means to be a dignified leader, you always have to keep the main thing the main thing. And now we're going to hear from a prominent orator, philosopher, and resource for the Vedanta. He was teaching me how to pronounce this, Vedanta Academy in India. And he's going to teach us actually about the Vedanta philosophy of life on elevated leadership. Please help me welcome virtually Sudhakar Das.
Good afternoon, everyone. The topic this afternoon, elevated leadership. Who is a leader? If we look at the definition of a leader is one who has followers. But this could apply to the captain of a team. It could apply to parents. It could apply to a CEO. It could apply to a municipal commissioner. It could apply to a president. If you have followers, you are a leader. Another word for leader, synonym, is influencer. But influencer has different connotations. But the idea is that a leader has influence over the followers. And if we want to elevate our leadership, if we want to improve our leadership, what it means is to optimize our influence. How can we maximize our impact on those around us? So for those of you who were hoping that I would mention something about how to get people to follow you, this is not what the topic is about. This topic is about how to improve yourself, how to improve your ability to lead so that people would want to follow you, would want to be influenced by you. There's a famous saying, if you want to be loved, be lovable. If you want to be followed, be followable. Today's session derives its wisdom from the timeless philosophy of Vedanta. It means in Sanskrit, the end of knowledge, because it provides the complete knowledge of life. It's the oldest philosophy in the world. And we're going to take a few principles from this philosophy, Veda, Anta, and use it to optimize our influence. And I've chosen the three most important ones. So here we go. The first principle of leadership is that when we make a decision, when we act, which part of our personality are we acting with? Have you heard of the acronym BMI? I know some of you in the audience might say yes, body mass index. Wrong one. The one we want to learn today is body, mind, intellect. The body is your vehicle. It moves you from experience to experience. But what we're concerned with is who's driving the body. And there are two drivers. One is the mind, one is the intellect. The mind is that part of you which has the emotions, the feelings, the likes and dislikes, the impulses. And this part of you does not have the rationale. This part of you just feels and emotes. Now, when you make a decision, do you make it on impulse? Do you make it on emotion? Someone is nasty to you and you react, but it could affect the business. It could affect another's business. Do you act on that emotion? Do you act on anger? Do you act on vengeance? Do you act on being disregarded, rejected? Or do you act on what's best, not just for yourself at that moment, but for the long term, for your stakeholders, for the larger community? And in order to do that, to manage our emotions, to make a decision that is in the best interest of yourself long term, we need to use the intellect. And the intellect is that part of our personality which has the ability to pause, reason, judge, decide, to think clearly. So when we have to make a decision, the mind or the intellect, and depending on which one is stronger, that's the one we're going to act with. But we don't know about this intellect. And unfortunately, it's not been developed in any school or university where we have the ability to manage and control our emotions. One of the suggestions I'm going to make at the end of this session is to wake up a little bit earlier and invest some time to improve ourselves, to develop our intellect. And you might get inspired and you say, tomorrow I'm going to try it. I'm going to wake up 1 hour earlier. You set that alarm for an hour earlier. And what happens when the alarm rings? Snooze, snooze. But who decided what time to wake up? You decided. And you're not able to do what you want to do because when the alarm rings in the morning, the mind goes, 5 more minutes. The mind goes, I need more sleep. What stops us from being the best version of ourselves, from acting in the higher interest of ourselves and others, is not the environment. It is our own mind. And to the extent we want to optimize our personality, our company, our stakeholders, to that extent, we need to develop the intellect to take the decisions for our future. So let us change our leadership model from, instead of acting on impulse, reactive leadership, let's move to reflective leadership. In a continent like Africa, well, this applies to the whole world. Let's us groom or aspire to be visionaries, not just crises responders, where we're responding to the emergencies of the day. Let us use the intellect. Set a vision, set a goal, act for the long term. Now, having covered the first aspect of leadership, which is to develop the intellect, act with the intellect, let us not confuse this with intelligence. There is a difference between intellect and intelligence. Intelligence is when you have the knowledge, the information. We have a grasp of this so easily today because of AI. We have all the information at our fingertips. But does that give us the ability to manage our personality, to manage our emotions? You may have all the knowledge. I know a cardiologist who consults patient after patient not to smoke, not to drink, and he's a chain smoker. Does he have the knowledge of what smoking does to the heart? Of course he does. He's written articles, journals on it, but he does not have the intellect to manage the mind's desires. So intelligence we get from school, university, AI, but intellect we have to build ourselves. The second principle of leadership is the temperament. And the temperament I'd like to share with you today is this. We want to move to the uppermost grade of leadership. We want to elevate our leadership through the 3 models: tamas, rajas, and sattva. You can call it A grade, B grade, C grade. So let's start with the bottom, tamas. Tamas is the type of leadership that does not take responsibility, is lazy, procrastinates, indifferent, doesn't care. So naturally, in an organization, in a company, we don't want this temperament in our organization. We definitely don't want it in ourselves. And therefore, throughout the world in business schools, they are trying to encourage people to move from tamas to rajas. And rajas, you have activity. There is dynamic production. And the way they bring about that dynamic production is through the carrot, incentive, or through threat, which is the stick. So either you're being pushed into action by threat, or you're being lured into action by the incentive. Now, these two work with Rajas, but the other side of Rajas is that while you're active and while you're producing, you're also extremely agitated. So active, but agitated, restless, can't switch off, not able to go to sleep. When you're with your family, you're thinking about work. When you're at work, you're thinking about the family. The mind is never in the present. Sometimes I find CEOs, they put on the countenance of being friendly, being present. So they'll say, Sudhakar, good morning. How are you doing? But they don't wait for an answer. So sometimes for my own entertainment, they ask me, good morning, Sudhakar. How are you doing? I say, oh, I'm feeling depressed today. Oh, that's wonderful. Now have a good day. They're not listening. They're not there. They're not present. Why? Because of high agitation. The trouble with the Rajas model is when you're active but agitated, you don't produce. You make mistakes. We see this in sports. It's not the best team that wins, but the team that can handle the pressure, the team that can manage the nerves. Same thing with us. So if you see this diagram, it shows that when your mind is calm, there is no agitation. You see it there. Whatever effort you put in to a calm mind, you perform it perfectly to the best of your capacity, your ability. Why? Because your mind is calm. You don't make mistakes. But as soon as you're nervous, it could be giving a speech in public. It could be playing match point in a tennis tournament. It could be taking a penalty, 5 runs to win in a test championship. Depending what it is, if your mind gets agitated, and you see in the next diagram, when it fluctuates like that, whatever effort you put in to an agitated mind, there are mistakes, output is compromised. So for more productivity, more concentration, but also longevity, so we don't experience burnout, we don't experience heart attacks. I had a lecture to one of the banks in Europe, and an entire department was missing. And they're all in their mid-30s. They needed a sabbatical. Why? Burnout. So we want to elevate to the highest level of leadership. And this is called sattva. Sattva means tranquility, calmness, peace. But it is not the tranquility where you're in the caves or you're by the lake or by the beach. It's the tranquility in action. So you have dynamic action, but it seems effortless, you in perfect peace. So when you meet this person and you have a conversation with them, they seem so present. They seem very similar to Tamas, unemployed. But they seem unemployed and relaxed because they're so organized. They've used their intellect and they've thought so well in advance that they always seem to have time at their disposal. There is longevity. So for those of you who are CEOs, for those of you coming up, for those of you who have larger presence and influence, let us try and bring peace into the workplace, peace into the country, and see the productivity. So depending where we are, if we're in tamas, yes, we need some incentive to get to rajas. But when we're in rajas, to get to sattva, we need the intellect. And the third principle of leadership, we need a higher ideal. The why, the what are you working for? When we work for ourselves, we can only get so much of motivation because it's for the salary, and the salary is to pay our bills, to pay our lifestyle. How can you be motivated? And anybody who joins that team or that community or that country, how can they be motivated if you're only working for your personal interest? Now suppose a higher ideal means working for something bigger than yourself, depending on your capacity. And this is where we have to be realistic. Expand the circle that you work for. So if you see it in this diagram, the smallest circle is when you work for yourself. And that is when you get the least bit of energy. But if you expand it, you work for the family. You expand it a little bit further, you work for the community, the country. Now, as an individual, you can choose, and no doubt we're doing business, we want to earn, but let it be for the benefit of something bigger. So if you're just at the moment working for yourself, let that boundary be flexible. I'm going to start with my family. I work for my nephews and nieces. Try and give them the best exposure. I work for my village, my town, my community. Stretch. If you have the ability as a company to work for the nation. If you have the ability to work for the nation, work for the region. So as we move through these different boundaries, these different higher ideals, let those boundaries be flexible. Right now, my capacity is only so much. I only have so much resources. I only have so much talent to work for this circle. But as I grow, that boundary is not fixed. As I get wealthier, as I get more capable, instead of building security fences and walls, let me build longer tables. See how I can invite more people to take a seat. And this is working for a higher ideal. Nelson Mandela, the great leader, puts it beautifully. What counts in life is not the mere fact that we have lived. It is what difference we have made to the lives of others. And perhaps we need to clarify or change our vision of leadership. Julius Nyerere, the African visionary, he told us that leadership is not about being in charge. It is about taking charge, taking care of those in your charge. Leadership is not about being in charge. So it's not about the position and the authority and the power. It's about the responsibility, taking care of those in your charge. And when you work with this higher ideal, you inspire others to do the same. In our organization, let's attract those people who are like-minded. Let us make it an infectious. Let's spread that. Let that be viral to make a difference to others. The difference is when you work for incentive, it's short-lived. You need incentive after incentive to keep working. But when you work for initiative, it keeps going. And to work for initiative, you've got to clarify the why. You've got to clarify the what. And for your own motivation, let it be about something bigger than yourself. So ask yourself the question, leaders today, are you working for incentive or are you working from initiative? And how do we bring initiative into the organization? So let's recap. The way to elevate our leadership is through three things. The first one is when we act, let it be with the intellect. So you can see it on the screen. Elevated leadership is being intellect-led, not with the mind, with the emotions. The intellect can take the emotions into its consideration. But if you act on emotion alone, we might make some terrible mistakes in the heat of anger, in the heat of rejection. How do we deal with the crisis? How do we deal with pressure? That's the intellect's ability. The second aspect is, let us elevate our leadership. From tamas, inaction, to rajas, action, but without the agitation. Dynamic action, but peace of mind. Let the workplace be a place of productivity, but of cheer. And the last principle is, whatever our influence, let it be for a clear, higher ideal. And when I say clear, higher ideal, we should be able, each leader here, if someone was to ask you, what are you working for? Can you put it in one line? This is my mission. And can you communicate that to everyone in your group? in your company who's working with you? Every team member, can they repeat the same thing? What are we working for? And if the message is clear, starting from you all the way down, you have a clear, higher idea. But in order to do this, we need to walk the talk. Talking and giving pep talks, motivational aspects, that won't inspire your team as much as your example. Oliver Goldsmith puts it beautifully. He says, you preach a better sermon with your life than with your lips. Lead the way. And the way to take this initiative of elevating your leadership is investing in yourself. A true leader keeps growing, keeps developing the internet. And the recommendation is make that time in the morning, or it could be any part of your day, half an hour or 1 hour for your personal growth. When I say personal growth, not bodybuilding, intellectual development. Now, where do you start? How do you start thinking about life and these higher principles of living and thinking? I would recommend these 4 books. It's written in contemporary thought and language, and it's taken the world's wisdom and put it into a structure. But read it in this order. And fortunately, we have organized some books. We've sent them from India, and they're available right outside the door. So you can pick up a book. I would recommend read it in this order. The first book being The Introduction, The Fall of the Human Intellect. The second book, Governing Business and Relationships, which is the application of the intellect. The third book, What Happens If the Mind Takes Over, Devastating Attachment. And the fourth book, When the Intellect is So Developed, What is the Purpose of Life? That book took 25 years by my teacher and mentor, Swami Parthasarathi, to write, Vedanta Treatise, The Eternities. If you'd like more content to find out how you can take your journey forward, you can also have a look at this website, vedantan.online, which has more steps available. And if you'd like to join us every Sunday, we have sessions where we see how we can elevate our leadership. So I leave you with this quote by the great Kenyan environmentalist and politician, Wangari Maathai. She says this: in the course of history, there comes a time when humanity is called to shift to a new level of consciousness. That time is now. I encourage each and every one of you, don't waste a moment. Let us elevate ourselves to elevate our leadership, to elevate our influence. If you want to be followed, be followable. You have the 3 principles. The rest is up to you. Thank you, everyone. All the best.
Thank you so much to Sudhakar. I love the last quote that he shared. I'm just going to steal a little bit of it from Wangari Maathai. We have to shift to a new level of consciousness. And just listening to him, it is really, for me, cemented that leadership and entrepreneurship journey is not linear. What works for me may not work for you, but we can take the principles and then we can affect them in a way that's beneficial to you. Kind of like parenting. How you raise your kids is not the way I would raise my children. But now we go into the final panel of the day. I'm going to need a lot of energy. Please feel free to still ask questions. And this one is on unified prosperity, emerging trends and technologies shaping Africa's entrepreneurial landscape, including impacts of G20. When I read this title, there's really 5 key areas. So it's quite jam-packed because we talk about prosperity, we talk about trends, we talk about technology, we talk about entrepreneurship in Africa, and we're talking about G20. So when we were prepping for it with the panelists, we tried to encapsulate as much of the 5 points in as succinctly as possible, and we hope that we will then be able to get as far as possible with the knowledge that we have. It's a really great panel, some of which I really absolutely adore, and some I learned from. So please help me warmly welcome to stage Khusela, Diko, Chairperson, Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on Communications and Digital Technology. I will also be joined by Phuthi Mahanyele-Dabengwa, CEO of Naspers South Africa. Oh, wow, energy. Okay. And the last spot was meant to be taken by Audrey. Unfortunately, she was not able to join us today, but she made sure that we have somebody from SystemicLogic, and we have the Chief Data Solutions Officer, and she's so cute. She said to me, I like her, we already had a chat. She said, well, I'm Audrey Light, but her actual name is Tanaka Mandidi. A round of applause, please, for Tanaka. I love your energy. You're such a cool woman. Please can ask you to sit there. Thank you. She literally said that. She said, I'm Audrey Light. So let's get right into it. I'm going to try and keep as close to time as possible, so we're not going to speak for 40 minutes, but I want us to still encapsulate all the things that we spoke about that we had said. So let's get right into the statistics. I'm going to start with you, Khusela. For the benefit of just a time, I'm not going to call you mang and all the titles. You know I love you all and I respect you all, just first name basis, so that it saves time, right? So internet economy, Khusela, is forecasted at, and I'm going to use dollars because we have people from Africa here so that they can understand, $712 billion by the year 2050. What steps need to be taken in order for us to take advantage of it as South Africa? Because technology is not a myth, it's happening. It's not just a catchphrase, it's not just AI for IR, it's taking over. How do we catch up and reduce disparities for our country?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Thami, and let me greet everybody in the room. I can tell that this is really the graveyard shift.
Totally.
But also to congratulate Sinayo for what I heard was a very, very successful sessions. Thami, thank you so much. So you're right, technology is not a myth, and the issue of a digital future is not something that we should be talking about 2050. It's now, it's there today.
Yep.
So for Africa to be able to participate, and I think, as you're saying, have a fighting chance, we need to build on what we already have, and as we do that, we need to be inclusive, because I think the discussion changes, you know, depending on where you are in the world. You go to a number of countries, they are having discussions about not only ethical AI, not only integrating fintech, but in Africa, we're still talking about exclusivity. And when we're talking about exclusivities, because digital inequality, which we're starting to see, for example, in South Africa, also interacts with multiple other inequalities. You look at women in rural areas, you look at black women in rural areas, they're oppressed in a number of ways, and then the digital economy, which affects all facets of life, adds to that. So what do we need to do, and what have we done? So, and I suppose higher ideal that was being spoken about, a couple of years ago, South Africa would have adopted the National Development Plan, and part of its foundation was that at least by 2030, which is 5 years from now, we need to ensure that there's universal connectivity. Right. Kudos to South Africa. We have more than 100% penetration in terms of mobile. You know, you look at the global indexes, we rank like 40 out of 193 countries on digital governance and so forth. Mm-hmm. But the question is this connectivity, as it's spoken about, is it universal? Is it meaningful? Is it accessible? And I think that's where we need to start. Where we're saying that as South Africans, we need to ensure that we begin really coming up with a national strategy that brings everybody on board. One of the things that we're doing in Parliament, for example, tomorrow, we are inviting all the mobile network operators, Vodacom, Telkom, and all of them. We're saying, guys, there's a problem. Okay, there's a problem. If you're in the rural areas, you need to go stand on top of a mountain to get signal. So we can't be talking about the impact of AI in an environment where people are not even connected. Then you have a problem where people cannot even afford these devices that we're talking about. So you speak about 5G networks on what? My daily phone, it's not going to work, right? Then you speak about issues of data costs. South Africa still has some of the highest data costs in the continent, and what do we need to do to bring everybody together? And as you do that, then the digital skills, because it's not about connectivity for connectivity's sake, but how do we ensure that we have the skills, our people have the skills to be able to use this technology meaningfully. So that's what we're going, and I think more than anything, it's about a collaborative approach. It's about legislative reform. I'm sure Phuthi will be aware that our legislation is so outdated. It's ridiculous. Takealot, which is a subsidiary of Naspers, for example, wanted to sell alcohol. They do deliveries of alcohol, right? And there's no law that allows them, because the Liquor Act only knows physical stores. So now when you're saying, no, but it's delivery via this mechanism, there's no law that creates the space to do that. So we're going to have to look at our laws. We're going to have to look at, how we're going to manage digital harms, issues of regulation, the over-the-top services, but the issue of security and sovereignty is critical. I could talk all day, Thami, but I know we're running out of time. But I do want to emphasize issues of sovereignty, because as this rapid technological change takes us forward, nobody should be left behind. And firstly, that also means our own homegrown systems. It also means protecting and respecting our own laws, because at the end of the day, our country is one that, as we move with the digital economy, we need to ensure that we bring our people along, we continue our path along redress, transformation, etc. Thank you so much.
So, if you could talk the whole day, I want you to know I could listen to you the whole day, because we're both very passionate about similar things. But you mentioned Phuthi's name, you mentioned skills and talents, you mentioned Takealot, and I know how passionate you are about, the digital platform economy. And I know how you've spoken about we don't have enough companies on the digital platform economy, and we have the skills. We have the talents. And how do we, we're a little bit behind the curve. How do we get ourselves there, especially in a global space where anybody can sell to everybody? We need to really, really catch up. So I want to touch on that so we don't lose time, because I know how passionate you are about that and how you're going to touch on that one.
Yeah. No, thank you very much. So I think, firstly, I must say, Khusela, you're unbelievable. As chairperson, I was talking to her about another issue that she immediately had responded on. I saw through the media. And now she knows about an issue that I didn't even realize that as a chairperson she knew about. So it's incredible. Anyway, but we are really focused on homegrown solutions from a technology perspective, and as an AI-first organization, Naspers and Process. And for us, what's been important is the fact that for companies such as Takealot, as was mentioned earlier, these are homegrown organizations, but we need a lot more of them. So with Takealot, on that platform, I'm very happy and very proud of the fact that we have 20,000 sellers on there. Now, these sellers are organizations that many of whom didn't even exist before. These are SMMEs which, have come onto our platform and immediately been able to sell, nationally. And then in addition to that, we also have, our 17,000 drivers who make sure that you get your parcels and goods on time. We have our 11,000 restaurants. Many of these restaurants, had Takealot not been around during COVID, would no longer be existing. And they still exist today because they were able to sell online. Now, one of the things that we've started is that we've started a township initiative, where we started in Gauteng, and we've made sure that Takealot is using sellers from the townships. So we are saying that gone are the days where you would have someone selling something on a street. That person on the street needs to come onto a platform where they're able to sell their products nationally. They're able, all they need to do is focus on bringing their products onto the platform,
Scaling.
and then those products are then distributed wherever they're required and wanted by clients nationally. And so we've started in Gauteng. We've now moved into Mamelodi, into Mpumalanga. And then we are now into 2 other provinces as well. But it is about ensuring that we can have as many people as possible on platforms. Now, here's my problem. My problem is that when I look at our audience here, I'm sure if I was to ask where they're buying their clothes, their fashion, their, all of this, it's platforms, international platforms. I don't have a problem with international platforms, and competition is very important. However, you need to also look at how much these organizations are investing locally. We need to be investing locally, because when I speak about us having 20,000 sellers, I'm talking about local businesses here. And when you look at the sellers on other platforms, you'll find that less than 50%, in fact, less than 40% even are local sellers, and yet they're selling here, and we are buying. And so we need to be looking and seeing who we are buying our goods from. But the good thing is the fact that with digital literacy, people are starting to, build up their own businesses, etc., and be able to scale those businesses through platforms. But what I've loved also is just seeing how entrepreneurs have been able to come onto our platform and then actually be able to get onto some of the big retailers just because they're now well-known brands. So,
I had to bite my tongue there. I almost said the name of an organization, the S word. I won't say the S word. So I'll come to you, Tanaka. And it's so sad. And I'm gonna move from Phuthi's point about we could be the breadbasket. We really could be the breadbasket for other continents and other countries. If you look at where we are on the working age, with working age human beings starting businesses through innovation and technology, we're sitting at 22% versus, I think, 18% Latin America, 13% Asia, but we're not taking advantage of it. What should we do to take advantage of this?
Thank you. So as Audrey Light, I'm going to go a little bit rogue.
Audrey Light.
So if there's anyone who knows her here,
I'm not going to get over that from now on.
Absolutely. So I think if we think about the African context, our energy, our entrepreneurial energy, is our biggest asset. We are hungry. We are resilient, and we have it in us to actually be leading the world when it comes to any entrepreneurial venture. What I think is the next pivotal thing that we need to be considering, and some of the panelists have touched on this, is 2 critical things. Let's get the digital infrastructure right, because the digital infrastructure is going to unlock things like access. I can actually have access to market, I have access to learning, and I have access to funding to grow my entrepreneurial ventures. And then the second component is the skills. It's one thing to give a person a car, but if they don't know how to drive, you're dead in the water. So we need to make sure that our young, hungry entrepreneurs are empowered through the right platforms and are also empowered from a capability perspective to be able to compete on a global stage. And we're seeing this. This is not a future ambition. It's a reality that's right in front of us. Companies like Flutterwave have gone from being fintech startups, and SystemicLogic has had the opportunity to shape some of that through our alliance with Access Bank. And you're seeing now they're sitting at close to in excess of 34 billion transactions cumulatively. So we have the knowledge, we have the expertise. It's about making sure that we're really investing in the digital infrastructure, and we're making sure that the most vulnerable of communities are connected to the global ecosystem, and that they have the right skills to be able to navigate that world.
Yeah. I'm going to bring it back again to you, and I'm going to shift gears from technology a little. Well, still tech, but let's go B20. Because you're now the chairperson of the Digital Transformation Task Force for B20. And I'm going to challenge this topic a little bit because it says unified prosperity. I think what we need to be looking for out of B20 is shared prosperity, because you don't necessarily need to be unified, but you can share the prosperity. How, in your role, are you going to try and navigate this for entrepreneurs?
So that's been very important for us. And we're very much aware of the fact that we are the last Global South country to be hosting, and we are handing over to, the United States, as we all know. And so from that perspective...
We had a good laugh about that earlier with Cass.
Yeah. And so from that perspective, it's been important for us to ensure that we are working on, policies that will really be pushing on, ensuring that Africa is able to really move ahead. So whilst we have focused on AI governance, which affects the whole world, we have focused on digital public infrastructure, which affects the whole world, we have ensured that connectivity is in there, as well as digital skilling. Because without these, we will not be able to catch up. We are talking about digital skilling when the rest of the world is talking about, recruiting digital, employees into their organizations. This is now how organizations globally are starting to look at the future, and the reality is that they are aging nations, and so for us as an age, as the opposite of that, as a young continent, we need to be ensuring that we are skilling our young people to be able to provide those skills, because yes, we will continue to be focused on artificial intelligence in an ethical manner and using robots, etc. But we do need to have humans who are adequately qualified to be able to work with these robots as well and provide them with information. But it starts with the basics. Can we please stop teaching our kids maths literacy?
Yep.
Because this thing is keeping us behind. We cannot keep holding on to that. What we need is to be making sure, number one, that our teachers are adequately skilled to teach proper mathematics. And, then ensuring that our kids, because a kid who is sitting in Venda in a rural school, who has got the ability to be doing mathematics at the best level, they need to have higher grade mathematics. And they need to be able to have access to that. I mean, growing up, we had standard grade and higher grade mathematics. We never had this maths literacy, so it needs to come to a stop.
I agree with
and then we need to make sure that kids have access to science subjects as well. And that doesn't stop kids from also being able to have, access to arts and other subjects, which are also important. But let's make sure that mathematics and science are there as part of the subjects, please. Quality subjects.
Absolutely beautiful. You just spoke to my heart. So on day before yesterday, I was helping with shaping the UNSDF framework, obviously in line with the NDP. And they were saying, no, we need to look at China. I was like, no. China's far ahead. Let's look at where we are now in order to catch up. And one of the things is, what is our education system doing to help us catch up? Because we have SDGs, we have this and this, but we're not solving the problem, the ground root problems. So we're going to go from B20 to G20. I'm going to give you a big gun. We obviously have outcomes and priorities that we want to achieve for entrepreneurs, and we can even stick to tech. And we have to know what the priorities are in order to create a step-by-step process to get there. What is our, let me say maybe, desired outcome and desired plan after all of this is done in November?
Yeah, I think the point that Phuthi made around the fact that the most important thing about this G20 is that as we hand it over to the US, it's going to be at least another 16, 17 years before you have a country of the Global South chairing again. And you need to ensure that as you do so, you've managed to entrench within it that which is important for the Global South. Hence then the theme for South Africa is equality, sustainability and solidarity. And the work that is being done, I mean the one working group that we interface with quite a lot is obviously the digital economy working group. And what we're looking at there is, again, policies that are able to speak to inclusivity. We are really trying to get government to make sure that there's a clear expression there about issues of regional integration. So while we operate in a global world, but how do we ensure that the aspirations of Africa find themselves within the G20 and ultimately then going forward. But what I want to say more than anything is that if we don't get in South Africa the startup ecosystem right, I don't think that we're going to be able to get anywhere very quickly. And when I say that, you meet young people, not only in tech, right? You meet young people who are saying, there was I think it was Mpho who asked a question earlier about access to finance and what. Startups, young or old, those startup companies must be given an opportunity to fail and fail and fail and fail, you know, but then they're still supported. Innovation doesn't happen overnight. And when you ask in South Africa, where is the startup ecosystem located? You know, even within the digital space, you don't get a sense that it's coherent, it's being driven somewhere. So those are the things that I think, you know, things like the S20 are going to be driving within the G20. But maybe let me just stop by saying, because I can see you looking at the clock, if South Africa...
You caught me out.
If South Africa is able to put a more, like Madiba said, human face to the G20, then we would have achieved what we want, because we cannot allow this, I don't even know what industrial revolution it is now, to leave anybody behind.
Yeah.
So that for us is what is most key. Thank you, Tanaka.
I'm going to use an analogy, Tanaka, and I hope this analogy will land, because I like practical things. So let's say economy is the organization. So the organization's name is called economy. I believe the shared service is actually technology. And the reason I say that, and I'm talking to trends, I'm talking to entrepreneurs, all 5 of these things need that. They need technology. But unfortunately, we're not giving tech enough focus. And I say this because I spent 20 years in corporate, and I saw how shared services never get attention. Your IT, HR, comms, nobody cares about it until it falls apart. Then everybody all of a sudden cares about it. And I feel that's the same thing that's happening with technology if economy is the organization. What's your take on that?
So I think we cannot keep thinking of technology as a separate silo
Exactly.
to the way the entire country, our organizations, our governments run. It is the backbone of every single activity that is happening in the economy today. How our children learn, how we transact, how we live. It is ingrained in every single thing that we do. When it comes to the shared services component, if we think about being able to set that up right, you'll find that successes that sit in one sector where they absolutely master the technology and processes and the people is able to kickstart and jumpstart innovation within another sector. So if we start moving towards a place where we're thinking about technology being ingrained in every single thing that we do, and we dedicate the effort, the investment, the infrastructure, and building that up right, we have an opportunity to shoot the lights out and really, really compete. We're talking about unlocking our international, our continental advantage when it comes to this. And we have what it takes. I think it's just about us prioritizing and focusing on the things that are really going to accelerate us forward versus being afraid to tackle these big, big topics because they're just not close enough for us.
I'm gonna end it off with firstly you Phuthi and then you Khusela, and I'm gonna ask you a very controversial question, but I think controversy is nice because it's gonna help us. We have such an obsession with international versus intracontinental partnerships, and I'm speaking to this because even when you say it'll be another 17 years until G20 comes for Africa. Yes, it's happening in South Africa, but we're actually doing it for Africa. How do we get rid of this obsession? You know, we can just rely on ourselves as Africa. Why aren't we doing that?
Well, we can. However, the reality is that the rest of the world is many leaps ahead of us. That is just the reality. And I say this knowing this because we operate in 100 markets around the world, okay? And what I see in other markets is completely different from the way in which we operate. Now, South Africa has got the best regulations, wonderful government, best, but in terms of how far we are, we still very far behind. And then our neighbors are even further behind and they're relying on us. And so, we need to partner with the best in the world. That's how you make use of it. You partner with a country like India, which has been able to leapfrog from poverty to becoming a leader in technology. You partner with a country like China, which has been able to leapfrog. So we don't need to say because we are Africans, we must only partner as African. No. Let's look for the best partners in the world and partner with them, and then make sure that we are able to then consistently, ensure that we are replicating that on the African continent. That's how we move forward.
And I'm glad you answered it that way, because I always say in moderating, two truths can coexist. And I wanted you to contradict no, we must rely on ourselves. Yeah, but there's benefit in also relying on the big boys, I'm thinking of that other song, but I won't sing it for you.
Who used to be small
boys. Yes, I won't sing it. I'm going to end this off because we're ending off the day with this panel. And I'm going to ask you to be the one who closes us off. What should our shared vision be as South Africa? You can answer me from a technology perspective. Once even G20 is long gone after November.
Yeah, that's a question, hey? Our shared vision should be exactly what Phuthi was talking about now. And that is to ensure that South Africa is able to compete. The region is able to compete with the best of the world. We would have learned from them. There's an African proverb that says, if you want to go far, go alone. But if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go with others. Now, I believe that as Africa, we are standing at a cusp of a moment that if we indeed did the things that we are saying that we are going to do, issues of digital public infrastructure, issues of connectivity across the continent, cooperation amongst ourselves, then indeed we'll be going further. But I do want to make a call that, you have government on one side, you have the private sector on the other. And up until we have honest conversations about social compacts that bring the people along, we're not going to get anywhere. Because we may have the right policies, we may have the capital on the business side, but unless we are working towards a shared goal, that shared prosperity that you're talking about, we're not going to achieve something. So we need patriotic men and women across the board in the public sector, in the private sector, in communities, in business to work towards this shared objective. And that's what I think we need to do.
I love that. I'm going to end it there. Unfortunately, technology did fail me a little bit, so I couldn't get your questions coming through. But I think it's a beautiful note to end on. We need to have honest conversations. Then we need to have honest implementation and honest monitoring in order to get us forward. Please, everybody, a round of applause for my panelists as I help usher them off the stage. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm going to ask Nozipho to please come back on stage. She's going to help us start to land the plane. We are 10 minutes to landing.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm round of applause for Thami and her panel, please. I have a really simple job right now, and as Thami has said, it's to hit the runway and to land the plane. We're going to do two very quick things. The first of these is we're going to invite Madame Tantaswa back onto the stage. She's going to give us some reflective comments and extend a vote of thanks on stage. And then Thami and I are going to come back, make a few announcements, and then bid everybody goodbye. So, for that reflective note and for a vote of thanks, Madame Tantaswa, if I can invite you back onto the stage, please. Let's give her a round of applause.
You know, this thing of technology, I'm trying to read my notes and the Investec notification comes on and I'm thinking, okay, who's stealing my money between my two daughters? But anyway. Ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed, we have had an amazing 2 days where we celebrated the best, the youngest, the bravest in Africa. And the awards that were given yesterday, I think they show the true character of who we are, who we can be when we all focus on what is right and deliver the Africa that we want to see tomorrow. My apologies, I need to see all the sponsors so that I can acknowledge them. And mine is really simple, because no duty is more important than that of returning thanks, of showing gratitude. This is why I'm standing here today to say thank you. Firstly, to our sponsors, and if I can name them, Jacaranda FM, AFCFTA, Afremix Bank, FEWASI, Gacheshos Trust, B20, G20, EY, Deloitte, Palo World, Bidvest, Eskom, ABSA, Standard Bank, African Bank. Can we please give a warm round of applause for our sponsors? Thank you very much. Without you, this couldn't have happened. And as I said, Sinayo really congratulates once more all the awardees from last night. May it be the beginning of a new trajectory and a pivot place for a greater way where your impact, not only to your communities, but to the world is enhanced. We are grateful to the Convention Centre for hosting us and everyone involved in feeding us and keeping us hydrated. A sincere thanks to the two amazing MCs that we've had. Please, a big round of applause for Thami and for Nozipho. Just beautiful what you were doing. And seriously, thank you for keeping our speakers and the audience at the edge of their seats for all this time. To the Sinayo people who have looked after us, have worked tirelessly to ensure that we have an amazing Nextgen Africa 2 days, thank you very much. We are sincerely grateful to all the participants, the people who not only spoke to us and with us, but gave us a glimpse into the unique souls, both yesterday evening and today. To all the amazing speakers, thank you for sharing the core of who you are, ensuring that the leaders of tomorrow and the young entrepreneurs have a sense of what it takes to be not only successful, but great. You ensure that we don't only learn from yourselves and your stories and your experiences, but that we are agitated to be the best of who we can become. You know, sometimes people can give you money, and I think someone said, you know, about that. I think it was Gogo, yeah? But if they don't give you the access, then it's a problem. And if anyone's like me, you would know that if you gave me money, I'm gonna buy handbags and shoes, and it's not gonna last for a while, for long. However, when people not only share opportunities, because I believe that a lot of opportunities were opened here, if anyone was listening and taking notes, there's a lot of opportunity and access that has been demonstrated, because this is not just about talk shop, it is about action. So if you are listening, they not only shared opportunities, but also gave us the value of their experiences and the learnings from both their mistakes and their wins that then empower us in ways untold. So only if you have ears, you have heard, if you have eyes, you have seen, but if you have purpose and are driven, you will act, and act now, because the stage has been set for all of us. the people who were here, both today and yesterday, just trusted us, I feel, and have afforded us with quite a lot. And to them, we say, Magwande. Indeed, because of your humanity, we are sure that tomorrow we will be reaping where we have not sown. And the shades of the trees will be shielding us from the elements, but those trees we would not have planted. But what is key is, as the young people, as the entrepreneurs, as the people who have the means, what is it that we're doing to ensure that while we are sitting under the shades of the trees that were planted by others, we are planting those trees and other trees for future generations. My hope and prayer is that we learn from everyone who's here and pay it forward. I pray that we will not sit and think, I'm still a young person. I pray we will forever remember that the best time to plant trees, as they say, if it was not 20 years ago, it is now. So let's start and continue planting those trees with pride, knowing that we won't sit in their shades. And yet when the history of our tomorrow is told, the future will thank us for having been alive. Africa, your time indeed is now. Let us rise and author the course of our tomorrows. Thank you.
It's a beautiful way, ladies and gentlemen, to begin to wrap up and to close. Thank you for those beautiful reflections, pulling us back to the insights for the day. Thami and I are going to say our goodbyes. Thami, I hope that you're going to be joining me as we say our goodbyes. No, that was the end. That was the vote of thanks. Now, everyone has been acknowledged. Everyone has been thanked. So the only thing that's left for me to do is just two things. The first of these is to make a small announcement. You might have noticed that Sudhakar made mention of books that have been made available all the way from India. There is a bookstore that is in the exhibition area towards the back. So if you want to purchase any of those books, they are available, and we sincerely encourage you to have a look at those 4 installments that he had made reference to. The other thing that Thami and I decided we would do as we wrap up the day is perhaps to share a reflective thought, something that we're taking away and holding with us as we walk through these doors. And I kept on hearing this African proverb coming into the room today, that if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, you need to go with others. And I wondered, Thami, what if we went fast and far? What would need to be true? And I think the answer is right there. To go fast and far, we need inclusive and diverse growth. We need to be intentional about cultivating collaboration. We need financial velocity, money that works. We need an Africa that is unlocked and ripe with opportunity. And we certainly need a unified prosperity. It's been an absolute privilege to serve you today and to share the stage with you, Thami. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been great. We've been in this industry. I think you've been in the industry a lot longer than me. It's the first time we've ever shared a stage together. So well done to Sinayo for making this finally happen. I just want to say, you know, when I am at events, I always say that the MCs and the moderators are actually the final product. The hard work happens beside the scenes. It's the people that have to be called, the panelists that have to be, you know, brought forward. It's the tech team. We wouldn't have a voice if there wasn't a tech team. So I personally always want to acknowledge all those people, including our teams, that help us get ready. We don't wake up like this. They help us to get ready like this. I believe, and mine is a personal takeaway, I've always believed that being the message architect is a God-given calling for me. It is not just a job. Yes, I enjoy the money, but it is a God-given job for me. And I'm very particular about which stages I go to. If I'm not instructed by my Lord and Savior to be on them, I don't go to them. And this was one of them that God told me to be here. This morning, was a little bit of a wobbly, and God instructed me to stay here. And I think it's been beautiful to watch everything happen. And for me as an entrepreneur, one who's quite successful, and I'm going to do that, I think as entrepreneurs, we mustn't be shy to say we're also successful, you know? We mustn't be shy. I want to be more successful, but I am successful. As an entrepreneur, I've taken lessons out of this. And it's been such a privilege to be able to serve, but also to learn. And my one key takeaway from my entire day is also understanding that as an entrepreneur, your wellness also lies in your boundaries. Make sure your boundaries are set while you serve humanity and society. And with that, I thank you.
Thank you so much. Drive safely.